Welcome back to episode 2 of Community Spotlight for November 2022. Let's get into it. Today's guest is the creator of Lustful Remorse and the upcoming Coastline Villa map, Paperboat Hat. Along with him, I have my good friend Tree of Smoke. Gentlemen, welcome to the Spotlight, and thank you for your time.
Cool. Thank you for having me here.
First off, I'd like to get a little bit of background on your experience with Unreal Engine and mapping in general.
Everything that you've seen in Lustful Remorse, I learned making Lustful Remorse. I did not know a shred of Unreal Engine before stepping into making that. I did not know a shred of level design. I did not know anything about how to make a level at all. All I have under the belt is my experience as a concept artist to design aesthetics and my experience as a concept artist using Blender. So I have some knowledge using 3D, but I don't know how to use Unreal Engine. Everything that you've seen in Lost for Remorse wasn't learned making the map. So yeah.
That's really impressive for how big that the map has become, or like
mm,
how popular it is, and like you not knowing anything about like the program that you're using.
I'm really impressed with how you came up with the beginning text for the level. How did that come about?
when I picked up the tutorial about how to use Unreal Engine, one thing was like how do you make a windscreen? And it's a simple, hey, you win text that comes up. And I was like, well, if you can do that, why can't you do that for Ready or Not? But you put it in like, a blurb text like you did in SWAT 4, where, you have your little information that you pop in the corner of the screen. But at the same time, how do you like make it a bit more modern? So I took the idea from SWAT 4 to have that initial blurb and I mixed it with Call of Duty because I really love how Call of Duty does those intro text. And it's like Call of Duty is a bit too military for what a Ready or Not is trying to be. So let's look towards SWAT
Hmm.
4 and blend the two ideas together. You know, because I feel like what Call of Duty does get really right is that it can catch your attention span. It can catch your attention and keep you engaged.
Yeah, and
Um,
it ties also your video you made, which was also
mhm,
spectacular, by the way. It ties that
thank you.
into the actual map. It feels like
Mhm,
after you've watched that and you load the game, it's almost a
mhm,
continuation.
mhm.
One of the things I've really noticed about your mapping is, in general, is you really like to stick to the core design principles that Void have already laid out, and the whole
Yes.
lore and atmosphere, and everything feels so
Mhm,
almost vanilla, like this should be in the game.
yeah,
So.
exactly. And that's exactly what I was trying to aim for because at the end of the day, if I want to showcase my skills to work at Void Interactive, what better way to do it is to make something that can fit directly in their universe.
So what made you choose to go for such a dark, gritty feel on this map?
Because I mean, everyone loves Fairfax from SWAT 4. Everyone loves it. But do they love it because it's a Hollywood portrayal of a criminal? No, right? People
Yeah,
love it because of how raw it is,
it
but
sticks with you, that's for sure.
how yeah, exactly. It's like it's something that you look at and you're like, oh fuck, this literally could happen to like your next door neighbor. No,
And you would
this
never
this could
know.
be a real thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you'll know, and and and,
it's terrifying.
that's the stuff that sticks with you exactly. And yeah, because when I look at it, it was supposed to be a callback to domestic violence. That you have these guys that are going to brothels to take out their frustration on the girls, and one guy just happens to take it a bit too far. And that's kind of where all of the anal beads and the guns and the cuffs on the table and stuff like that. The gun is supposed to be a prop gun; it's not supposed to be a real one. But um,
For
but
role
the
play, that type of
players
thing.
who went by, yeah, exactly, the people who like to roleplay, and the knife in the pillow as well. That's supposed to be a prop knife for the guys that are into that. But it's like some people saw it as the real thing, and it kind of got me thinking, like, you know what? There's probably somewhere out there that is kind of screwed up enough to use the real thing. I've read stories about it, and you know what? If that's what they want to believe, I'm gonna let them believe that. I'm not gonna tell them otherwise, right? You know?
Hmm. I think
um,
sometimes it's better to leave it to the players to let them fill in some of the best horror
exactly.
stories or things like that, or where they don't tell you or show you too much of the monster.
That's exactly why I didn't make Kiara identifiable in the basement. when you walk down there, the question is this Kiara? We don't know, and that's kind of what I want to be terrifying. Is because you don't know if it's Kiara, and that makes it so much scary because she's not the only victim now.
Yeah, there's more
She's
than one
not the
barrel
only
in there.
one. Yeah, and I'm not sure how many players picked up onto it, but when you
That's
walk
deep.
into the basement, you're first encountered with like 10 barrels, but you don't have the context of the barrels. You'd be like, oh shit, there is barrels. And you walk down, and then you see the one barrel in there, and Kiara's kind of bubbling away in the acid. And then the whole point of why that basement was linear was, one, to put the entire focus on the barrel. Everything is dark. I don't want you to see anything. You just kind of, it's the tension of being like, what's there? What is over there? And the suspense as you walk up to it, and then you see the barrel, and you're like, oh shit, they're fucking boiling bodies in here. I don't know for any of those who picked it up, but the dozer barrel was picked deliberately because it's a barrel that you doze off in forever. The resignation letters on the office desk. I don't know how many people read that, because every time I watch the stream, people kind of like, oh, they just go in the office and they just leave. But if you were to, go down there and you were to lean to the right and actually read the note, it's all letters of resignation for all of the victims that have passed away, because it's supposed to be a cover up. That if they ever do find the link to them, that they can say, well, they resigned and they moved on elsewhere. But again, it's all little story details in the map that, for the people that are really attentive to what they get to enjoy. Another detail is in the loan shark's place. On the whiteboard, there's like all the names of the girls that work there, at least the recent ones that have debt, and the names that are crossed out are also the same names that are resigned, quote unquote. And those are supposed to be the ones that are in the barrel. Or I guess in Evelyn's case, she's dead in the bathtub. So yeah, it's those small things that I like to put into the level um, that I want to make it more than just, oh, it's a place that you raid, but it's just like, when you really read between the lines, there's a story within a story.
It sounds like there's a
And
whole rich lore there that I went totally unaware of.
yeah,
And
Yeah, that blows my mind
yeah.
that you put that much thought into it.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just I like that stuff.
I love
I
that stuff
mean,
too, making stories and yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
so with that being
and yeah,
said,
like
can you give us a little bit of information about your upcoming project? I hear it's tied to Lustful.
so this map, as I mentioned before, like it's going to be a continuation just because of high request, that people want to know where the future lies after figuring out what happened to Kiara. And because of the mapping competition, I just said, what, why not? It's a perfect time to take what I learned from Lost Remorse and apply it to this next map. Don't know what the official name is, but it's Coastline Villa for now, just as much as Lustful Remorse. Before the name was picked, it was just called Brothel. Um, so yeah, I don't know what the name is going to be yet, but whenever I decide that, then I'll decide that.
And I assume we can look forward
But
to the same amount of rich lore and little details in this one.
yeah, hopefully there's gonna be a lot of
excited.
custom assets in here, and a lot of this level is supposed to be tying off all of the loose ends from Lust Remorse. Like, why do they dispose of bodies in the basement? Why is that there? What does Mendoza have to do with the back room operations? Why did they pick it at the pub? All those questions that people have asked, like, who are all the other girls? Who are the victims? That this is the map that's supposed to tie all those loose ends, because again, as I said before, Last Remorse is supposed to be a one-off map. The mystery is that sometimes you don't get to have the answer you're looking for, but hey, I can give him the answer, and it's gonna go to this level. So anyway,
We're
yeah,
definitely
the
looking
guy
forward
who's
to
in
it.
charge, the guy who's in charge of this place, he's going to be the main villain, and he's just going to be a new villain that's introduced, because if I had the time and I was officially hired and all that kind of stuff, This would be a 3-part series where Lustful Remorse would be the initial entry, and then the second mission would be the investigation. You grab some leads, you take out a few people, or not take them out, but apprehend a few people, and evidence gather, and then on the third mission, all of that will piece together into the final raid. That's ideally what would happen, but I'm not going to spend that much time to make 3 maps, considering how much time and effort it takes to put 1 map out. Like I said, it's unrealistic for me to make 3 maps, so
Well,
I'm gonna
especially
have to cut
since you
the
said
investigation.
you're doing multiple, you're doing like lead designer, you're doing lighting,
Mhm,
you're adding assets, and you're doing some of the, white boxing.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm
so
doing a bit of
you're
everything.
wearing
Yeah,
many hats here, so I can imagine it's kind of like do 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 juggling
yeah,
all of this
yeah.
stuff. How do you like keep it all? How do you do it, man?
That's a question I ask myself too. I'm not entirely sure. But I would definitely say that a lot of it has to do with because I want to bring something to the table that other games aren't doing. Because there's a lot of games out there that know how to make a level look pretty. There's a lot of games out there who, you know um, how to make a level play well and make a level look really good. But when you consider the fact that they are also teams that are backed by usually AAA companies that have all the budget in the world, it kind of makes sense that they can hire specialists and make everything. But the one thing that interests me is like, can I do this as one person? Can I do this, by myself? And turns out that probably not to the same level, but you know, I tried my best to to achieve that quality. Um, and hopefully that translates over to to the players
Oh,
because
it
there's
definitely
there's a lot
does.
of small things. Yeah, again, the small things that I like to put in that really doesn't have anything to do with anything other than just because it feels lived in, like having a cup on, a cup of coffee on the table. It doesn't have to be there, but you know, why not have a cup of coffee at your office desk? It
Hmm.
just feels a bit more, just that little sprinkle on top.
It's
There's
like
nobody to say that you need to have a notebook. There's some guy maybe he likes writing a lot and he has like a notebook on his table. It's like nobody's gonna care about this random office cubicle, but I feel like that adds a lot of personality for the people who do want to look at it. So yeah.
well, it shows your passion and it really shines through. It's like a cook who
Mhm.
sprinkles love into his food. You can taste it. The care is the
Yeah.
care is shown there, and I think that's what makes
Mhm.
your work stand out so much. Uh, and I think that's why people have responded so well to it. And I'm really looking forward to your next offering for sure.
Thank
How
you.
how many hours do you
Um,
think you've put into Lustful and this mapping and project so far?
that's a good question. I know that I started Lustful in. I know it took around 1 month and 4 days or something. Um, yeah, so I spent a lot of my free time on that, varying hours because again, that month I decided not to take too many contracts in just because I wanted to spend time learning Unreal Engine. So we're talking about maybe 10 hours a day or 6 to 10 hours a day just sitting there and trying to figure things out. And obviously, I'm not always working in those 6 to 10 hours for that month, but because sometimes I just have to sit there and think about whether this is the right direction for the map, um, and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of it is sitting there and thinking and deciding on whether this is the right direction to go because if you don't think about it and then you spend the next week trying to get it to work and then it falls apart, well,
A
now
lot of
you kind
wasted
of just
time.
yeah, you kind of wasted a week. So
Yeah.
sometimes sitting there for the next few hours, literally staring at the screen, trying to figure things out in your head, will save you hours and hours and hours and days of work.
Of
You know
reiterating and rebuilding and scrapping.
exactly.
I get it. Yes.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
you're kind of mentally preparing and planning everything out before you kind of jump in.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good
So it's
strategy.
just like even from like an aesthetic point of view, even though my job as a concept artist is to iterate and make a lot of different variations of the map, it's like I don't have the luxury to sit there and make concept art for every little room and design every little thing out, because the difference with doing concept art on the job versus what I'm doing here is the fact that I'm not the one modeling everything. I don't have to model it as a concept artist. I just have to make it look cool, and that's somebody else's job to model it. But I'm not as skilled as someone who is working in the AAA industry that is specialized in modeling. I don't I don't know how to do that. So at best, I can model something simple, but not to the degree that it can be like an in-game asset that is super complex. If I
Mhm.
were to model all the little trims and the pattern designs on the walls and all that stuff, like that would take way too damn long for a single project for one person to do, or two people.
Mm.
And it would be just an entirely new skill set that I think will be too time consuming to learn, given how much I already have to learn now. You know,
So that
where
leads me into
I'm
another
already
question
juggling.
about assets, and you've paid out of your own pocket to produce a lot of this. Um,
Mhm.
how much do you figure the project has cost you roughly to just say Lustful Remorse, for example, to offer all of us this wonderful content for free? How much did you pay out of your own pocket for that?
That's a good question. I think I paid around $25 for the gore assets to have in the barrel, and then sorry, 20 USD. I'll say in USD because I don't work in USD, but for the audience, about 25 USD for the gore assets, and around 250 US for the voice actor and the usage rights. Uh, and what else? What else did I buy? I think that's it actually. So yeah, roughly around 275 USD for the production of Lostful. Lostful Remorse was supposed to be more of a map for me to test what can be done. So a lot of the geometry it was quite simple, very boxy, and um, I tried to use assets in its intended purpose because I'm already learning so much that I feel like I might overwhelm myself if I try to push everything to the absolute limits.
Mm, mm.
And I felt like that to push it creatively in a design sense, that would have to be the project after, once I figure out what can and can't be done in the engine.
Yeah,
And that's
don't
kind of where Coastline Villa comes in.
yeah, don't break the mold until you learn
Mhm.
how to get everything going. Yeah.
Well, that leads us
Yeah,
nicely
because like I
back into
said,
Coastline, which I think most people want to hear about. We talked a bit about the lore and how it ties in. Do you want to talk a little bit maybe about the actual design of the level itself or layout, perhaps? And I mean, don't give away too much, but what can people kind of expect from this one as maybe a juxtaposition to, say, Lustful?
oh, this one is going to be, well, a rich mansion. But I'm a really big fan of playing around with lights. As I mentioned before, I'm a really big Hitman fan. I really love the design of how IO Interactive does their level designs. I feel like every level is just so gorgeous that I take a lot of inspiration from how they design modern spaces. But the difference with Hitman is that the sandbox nature and the fact that it's a third person, the way that the level is designed has to be way more spacious, and to account for the fact that there's a camera hovering behind your character, as opposed to Ready or Not, which is a first person. We have a lot more liberties to compress that space, and um, uh, the design of the play space is going to be more challenging than Lost for Remorse, because I've noticed that there's quite a few people that had a bit of trouble clearing Lost for Remorse, but I feel like that's also because of the CQB nature. One thing that I've noticed is that people tend to have a hard time in true real scale CQB, because you don't have to worry. You have to worry about stuff like your weapon compressing. When you walk through a door, it's not like in real life where you can just prop the weapon over your shoulder, but in Ready or Not, your weapon actually goes up and you can't fire, right? And that's a deliberate design decision that I've made in Lustful in the very close CQB, because I've always wanted people to be more conscious about the weapon that they pick and not just running assault rifles every map. Not that there's a problem, because I think people should run whatever they want, but I want people to think just a little bit more about, like, is this the right weapon to pick for the situation? Not only because I want weapon diversity, I like it when people be like, hey, you know what, I want to run a shotgun, I want to run an SMG, I want to run this, that, the other, right? To make every weapon somewhat viable and somewhat useful in every situation. And you know, in the upper levels in the brothel area, you know, the hallways are amazing for assault rifles. But if you're trying to clear the small rooms with assault rifles, there are so many times where your weapon kind of props up in your face and then you get shot because you can't fire.
Yes, the
And
showers. I know it very well. It's killed me many
yes,
times.
yeah, and you know but that is that is entirely deliberate, because nothing stops you from pulling out your pistol. That's what pistols are great for, right? Then I feel like in the base game we don't use pistols enough, and it's only used as like as a last resort when
Yeah, the oh shit
literally everything
moments.
goes wrong. Exactly. Where
So in the
I
new
want
map, you're
pistols to
differing from that and you're going kind of the other way, aren't you?
exactly. So in Dustfall, where you have all these very tight CQB spaces where you're forced to, like, you know, think about the weapon length and all that, what you're bringing into. Whereas in Coastline, I'm trying to go the opposite direction. But the issue that you run into is that assault rifles are great at distance. So if you just keep making distance, there's no reason to pick anything but an assault rifle. So I figured that I could express that a bit differently in how the map design plays out, in that it's kind of like a pyramid type of layout, where the bottom layer is going to be very open and it's going to be heavily suited to long range. SA-58s, SR-16s, you know, with the scopes, and you have your regular M4s, your typical assault rifles. But as you go up, it's going to become more claustrophobic, where the residential areas at the third floor, that's going to be short hallways, it's going to be very tight, and that's kind of where shotguns, SMGs, pistols, all that stuff is going to be much more viable. Can you bring an assault rifle? Yeah, there's no reason why you can't, but I think that gives a lot of opportunity for people who decide to spawn on the roof to have a bit of a diverse kit, where it's not, again, not everyone's running assault rifles. For the guys who want to run assault rifles, they can go through the garage, they can go to the front entrance, they can go to the back entrance. For the guys who, you know, want to have that more control over the space and really specialize to the type of rooms that you're clearing, they can bring shotguns, they can bring SMGs and spawn on the roof. And then it's not like it's completely useless. You have skylights that you have to deal with, and you know, you can still shoot down and deal a lot of lethal damage. But for the ones who want to take the fight to the enemy and, you know, jump down through the skylights and clear out the bedrooms, they can do that because they've picked the right weapon for the situation. And hopefully, if I design it well enough, that it will sustain that.
That sounds
Yeah.
amazing. So, right there, you've got different play styles you can mix and match. I really like the idea of having multiple starting entry points. You have any other tricks up your sleeve that you're going to be adding, or?
Purchasing assets. I think I mentioned it before already. I don't know if that was caught on the recording, but yeah. Purchasing assets is going to be one thing that I want to bring back, because it was an option. And actually, I don't know if I could say that. But let's just say, in the old versions of Ready or Not, they did experiment with that. I think it's kind of open knowledge now. The pre-planning aspect was one thing in SWAT 4 that I really liked, and I did take some inspiration from Payday, actually. The asset system there, where you can, you know, everyone wants to cut the power grid. Everyone wants to, like, you know, open up different entry points. Everyone wants to have some sort of control over the situation before they even deployed. And that's a system that I wanted to bring in. And thankfully, Reap, being the blueprint wizard that he is, managed to get something like that working. Um, and yeah, it's all in the prototype phase, but it's in a phase that can be implemented into an asset system. The asset system itself isn't made, but From what we've made so far with the menu and the spawning system, it's perfectly doable. There shouldn't be any problems implementing it. But on the asset system itself, yeah, I like the idea of having certain areas that are difficult to deal with, make it a bit easier, like opening the garage doors to the supercar garage, where you don't have to deal with going down a very narrow staircase where only one or two people can fit in, and not having the other guy shoot your teammate in the back of the head while doing so. um, where they have an option to open up the garage door and just take the fight externally and take their time with it, as much as closing the shutters of certain windows to make it a bit easier, close off some angles to where they don't have to worry about this big open space. um,
It
I
sounds
like
like you can really
to,
make the map more dynamic using the system, like where things will change,
yeah.
doors will open, windows will close.
Mhm.
You talked about the blueprint and spawning system. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
um, yeah, I mean, I think the spawning system, I'm pretty sure I can talk about this because there was like a public video about it on YouTube that kind of
Yeah,
went
just a
over it.
quick breakdown of
um,
how it might look or work for people who are
uh,
curious.
so So it's gonna be mixing a bit of how SWAT 4's menu has done it. In SWAT 4, you have your suspect menu, you have your entry points, you have your civilians, and the overview of the situation. And as I mentioned with Mod.io, because I don't expect people to sit there and read a whole wall of text when they just want to play a map. I want to bring that information into the game, so that they can spend the time to read it if they want to, and if they don't, they can just ready up and go. But the whole system, the spawn point system, is very akin to uh, Rainbow Six Siege, but it has a ready up system. Because the one thing that I liked about Rainbow Six Siege was that all you had to do was click on where you wanted to spawn, and the countdown goes down, and you're in. Right? It makes it very simple. It's very clear where you're deploying, and your name tags show up wherever you want to go. Right? Uh, But in Ready or Not, because we have to craft the system from the ground up, we can't we can't expect it to work as intended because this we're working with a modding kit. So um, right now, what we have planned, which is functional at the moment in the prototype phase, is that there's going to be a map that has all the spawn points. Say like right now there's only three. I'm thinking of only sticking with three, and unless we can find more creative ways of spawn points that affect the gameplay, because that's the important part of it is that it has to affect gameplay. I will not put anything in as an asset that does not affect the gameplay because, well, there's no point in it being an asset other than being a gimmick, and gimmicks get old really fast. So, um, as of right now, the two primary spawn points is the front entrance and the backyard. um, and the roof will be limited to two people to spawn on there, and that will be a purchasable asset because you have access to the gas vents up there. I feel like that's a powerful entrance that should be purchased in an asset and not just be readily available.
All right, that
So
leads right into the next. I wasn't sure you wanted to talk about it, but the gas vents, that's also a new mechanic. You want to talk
yeah,
a bit about it?
um, yeah. So the gas vents at the moment, I know people have been saying like, oh, did you take inspiration from the recent Modern Warfare 2 campaign? No, because I've done it before I played the campaign. So it was actually just inspired from the Moscow Theater event. You design it in a way that isn't just a gimmick, you know? And the way that we're intending to make it work, thanks to Reap designing a bit of a portal system so we don't have to physically model the vents, is that there's gonna be like four vents, also 3 to 4 vents that connect to different parts of the map, and you can toss any tactical grenade you want in there, and that will be transported to wherever the vents open up to. So right now, I'm thinking of doing it in the lounge room, possibly in the kitchen, maybe in one of the miscellaneous rooms, maybe one in the main lobby. I don't know yet, because that's gonna have to be play tested. That's gonna have to be iterated on to make sure that it's not too overpowered and it's not too underpowered. So whenever we get to that, we'll experiment with where we want the vents are. But that's going to be another way for players who don't want to go through clearing out certain doorways and certain areas, and having the precision to throw a flashbang to bounce off a tiny corner. It's like it's all that stuff.
Hmm.
For
Well, it
people who
gives
just want to
people
be like, all right,
it gives people an
Yeah.
opportunity to clear some of the open spaces
Mhm.
without having to actually enter them, or
Exactly.
working with a split stack, or
Mhm.
I can think of a ton of different ways that this is going to affect gameplay, and this is one of the things I'm excited
Mhm.
about the most. It finally gives people that
Yeah.
want to use gas a cool reason to use it without everybody getting
Mhm.
pissed off at them. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'm excited to see what you have in store for us in the future.
Thank you for having me here.
Glad to have you. Well, that was Community Spotlight Episode 2 for November 2022. Stay tuned for Episode 3, where we talk to Reap and learn all about the coding and blueprints behind this project.